Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far on our live stream here. Since we're on the topic of Trudeau and his cabinetry and his reign in terror over across the nation, there's been circumstances in the amount of immigration that's happening in this country. Obviously, this is something that has put a lot of concern into many different people across the country, knowing that there's an influx of migrants coming in undocumented. We have just no means of real substantial control over the borders, how they're just pouring people in. And the factors of all this. Can we afford to help these people afford enough housing, enough shelters for them? What's the intention of all this? There's a lot of figures to be manifested out of this. And I think Trudeau is finally catching up to his own mistakes on this. In this new article that's released by the Financial Post here about it. So they stated Trudeau's immigration cuts could reduce housing gap by 45%, Watchdog says. So now that they brought in all these people for over the past many years, Trudeau has now made this claim that he is going to cut back immigration. He is going to cut back. He's not going to deport or do anything substantial on the influx he's already brought in, but we're going to cut it back a bit. But even as the Financial Post states, Canada still has a shortfall of 658,000 units. Considering there was already a housing crisis before the influx of illegal immigration coming into the country, before the migrant crisis, before the border crisis, there was already a substantial amount of people that didn't have homes, that didn't have shelters. There was already a homeless crisis that's already taken wind, and now it's just exploded even further. So this states Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's plan to restrict inflows of newcomers will narrow the country's gap between housing supply and demand, according to a budget watchdog. If Trudeau is successful in curbing immigration over the next 3 years, that would reduce the housing gap in 2030 by 534,000 units, or 45%, said the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, which provides independent analysis to help lawmakers scrutinize the government's activities. While the slowing population growth may help reduce the severity shortages, Canada's housing supply would still fall short of demand by 650,000 units in 2030, according to the office's report published Friday. It highlights the ongoing challenges of under construction in a country that's home is to some of the world's hottest real estate markets. Canada would require a total of 2.3 million housing completions by the end of this decade to close the housing gap, the watchdog estimates. That translates to 390,000 total units completed annually on average over the next 5 years. Last year, housing starts dipped to about 224,000 units. Trudeau's government last month reduced its annual permanent resident target by more than 20% and said it wants to halt population growth by shrinking the number of temporary residents, such as international students and foreign workers, through an exodus of more than 1 million people. So that was the claim that they've always made about this, that why we had to bring in undocumented illegal immigrants instead of having a better process to vet them in and actually have legal situation to allow them to gain access, is because of population. They claim that's population. Oh, there's not enough people having families, having enough kids that are going to help and serve the generations beforehand that are getting older and not able to work and so on and so forth. And that's a significant risk. That's not the case. That's not the real case of why they're doing this. The real case they're doing it is the fact that I just explained to you. They're bringing in people to exploit the workforce, exploit workers, so that people that were making a living wage and getting a substantial amount are getting kicked off so they can hire a bunch of temporary workers. They don't have to require them a substantial wage or require them to get perks and privileges of an employee because they're temporary workers. They get temporary status. And that's why you see a lot of places like Tim Hortons, retail giants explaining this. You see a lot in government sectors and all over the place. They're explaining this. So, the office, however, noted there's a significant risk to the projection in the government's plan, particularly the estimated outflows. The plan assumes that 2.8 million temporary residents will leave the country over the next 3 years, equivalent to 93% of the group's current population. Immigration Minister Mark Miller said earlier this week that the government is focused on making sure the people that don't want to leave after due process actually do leave. Miller cited records increasing the number of migrants removed from Canada this year as evidence that enforcement is happening. The government has set a goal to more than double the pace of construction to add 3.9 million homes by 2031 as it tries to calm housing angst and reverse wanting popularity. But pro-immigrant groups have warned that the migration curve could lead to shortages of skilled labor in sectors including construction. Well, then my question would be, if you're concerned about skilled labor, why are we not taking that opportunity then to advance people so they can be able to get the skills necessary to work in those sectors? Why are we making it so that we're exploiting our own people and exploiting the people coming into this country and abusing them for their labor, for their skills, and not treating them as employees? Why are we creating this system that exploits everybody instead of just promoting that to our own people, promoting that to our country? Like, wouldn't that make more sense? Wouldn't that make more sense? And also 3.9 million homes by 2031. Yeah, that's a math that it's not going to happen. But this is a news report from CTV Ottawa, where I guess now they've realized, because of immigration catching up to them, because of the mass flow of migrants that are populating these areas like Ottawa, Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Vancouver, the Maritime provinces, they're realizing that there's a crisis on foot. They're realizing that these people that are pouring in, we don't have enough houses for our own people, for our own Canadian citizens, and we're pouring more people in. We just don't have the means of measure to house these people, to serve these people, to allow them into our communities. That's what people in Springfield, Ohio were feeling. That's what people all across America were doing. That's why they felt that border security was a top priority, and Trump represented that. So here's what CTV Ottawa proposed in a quick action in result of Justin Trudeau's immigration policies. Listen to this.
We have breaking news tonight. We now know exactly where the city plans to build tent-like structures to house asylum seekers. CTV Ottawa has obtained a city memo revealing the two final locations chosen by city staff. One site is a portion of the Nepean Sportsplex complex on Woodruff Avenue. The other, 40 Hurst Way in Canada, near the Eagleson Park and Ride lot. The location in Barrhaven, which was being considered and caused significant pushback from residents, has not been selected.
So they're now implementing these warehouses, these, former sports complexes into migrant centers. They're now taking over arenas, sports complexes, community centers. They don't have any means to help people. They have no means to do anything at this point, and they have to do something because winter's coming. They don't want people to freeze out in the cold. So they just got to shove them into these centers. They got to shove them into these buildings and just overtake. And this is their just quick reaction to a systemic problem that they knew was going to happen. They knew that this influx of illegal migration caused by corrupt crony businesses that are exploiting these people for cheap labor. The government doing this. Trudeau saying that, inclusion is our best strength, how we need more multiculturalism. Well, now this has come to bite him in the ass to realize that we can't house these people. We have no means of shelter. We have no means of helping serve these people, so we got to just shove them into a sports complex. We just got to shove them into these random buildings. And again, this is not how you respond to this crisis, and I feel bad for the immigrants. I feel bad for newcomers being dragged in this country because they're not doing this on their own fault. They're not doing this to themselves. These are people that a lot of them just, got swooped in into this, that the government and corporations got these people into our country, got them in through the border illegally, no checks, no balances, no accountability, got them in, paid these people to remain in our country, and then use them for cheap labor. It's basically a reverse outsourcing. It's insourcing. Instead of corporations going out overseas to exploit their labor in their territory, they're deciding now, hey, we'll just take those war-ravaged refugees, bring them into our territory, and then they can just work at our coffee shops. They'll just work at our offices. They'll work at our manufacturing plants. And then we can use them as temporary labor because there's not enough people working, even though that's a complete fabricated lie. There's a huge unemployment number in Canada right now that they're not addressing this, and this is because of this. And they're exploiting that and exploiting the people here in Canada for cheap labor. So how is this exactly going? How exactly are they going to solve this problem? How exactly are they going to solve a problem that they have profit, that they have benefit from, that they have cultivated for this time now, long overdue? And clearly they know how serious this is. They know that's overdue with the fact that they're rushing to create these, pop-up shelters and housing for these people. We're just going to shove them into this building, shove them into that building. And just no awareness to the situation. No awareness to what this actually has done to this country. What their problems, what their initiatives of bringing in more people, how we need to influx more people because of population decline. How that's going to react, how that's going to work out and manage in a country that can't, just by mathematical numbers, can't barely serve their own people. We can't even serve our own Canadians. How are we going to deal with an influx of newcomers that came here illegally that we just don't have the services, we don't have the abilities to treat them? So this is a huge, huge dilemma of the nation. This is a huge dilemma of national security. This is something that now Trudeau has to bite himself on because this was the problem that he has created. This is the situation that him and his ministers have established for far too long. And they keep propagating people by saying this, we had to do this because of population decline. Well, why are you not making it easier then for Canadians to have families then? Wouldn't that make more sense? Wouldn't you want to encourage more Canadians to have families? Well, no. They made it even harder for people to raise families, which is why people are not procreating as much. And because of that, they're now exploiting other people from other countries and bringing them into this terror, bringing them into this hell. So we can exploit them and exploit their labors and abilities. And now you have places like Ottawa that are scrambling to house these people before winter comes. This is now, Trudeau, Mark Miller, and others involved in this scandal, in this scheme, now having to deal with the bite in the ass that they have created. And they're scrambling around to find any means to really just hide this problem. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away to realize that we have made this huge mistake. We have made this huge dilemma then now we have such an intake of this new coming population that it is just overwhelming Canadians. It's overwhelming the Canadian stature. It's not that we're against multiculturalism. It's not that we're against inclusion. Like I said, I'm not against immigration. I'm not against immigration. Immigration is what founds a lot of these countries together. But there has to be a system in place. There has to be some sort of checks and balances to figure out, okay, if we have this many people coming in, how many homes are we going to have to create? How many more hospitals do we need for certain towns? Where exactly are they going to live? Where exactly are they going to work? How are they going to contribute and attribute to our society? Those feel like, standard measures. That used to be the case back in the day. But because of this exploitation game that they're playing, where it's just human trafficking at this point, they're not doing it.